Hey guys, John V here from PhoneArena. You're watching our in-depth video review of the Asus Eee Pad Slider. It's available right now for $479.99, and it's pretty much the Asus Eee Pad Transformer from last year, but rather than sporting the convertible form factor of that tablet, it incorporates a slide-out keyboard inside of its body, so you don't have to purchase an additional accessory, so that's pretty nice. But besides that, it's a honeycomb tablet featuring a 10.1-inch display and a dual-core processor. Initially, the tablet bears a lot of resemblance to the original Transformer when you look at it head-on, but that's where it all ends, just because as soon as you take a look at it from the sides, you notice it's totally different. For starters, it's 68 hundredths of an inch thick, making it one of the thickest tablets out there in the market. It doesn't help that the bezel around the display is also large, increasing its overall size, and it's extremely heavy. After a while, our hands just get tired of holding onto it. Choice of materials are nice. You have mostly a plastic shell, accentuated with the soft touch, back cover here. You have the gray and white with the chrome separator right there. Some tapered edges. As a whole, nothing really that stands out when you look at it from the top, bottom, and sides. But when you slide out the keyboard there, it's definitely a standout, just because you don't see that many tablets offering this type of form factor. Just like on the original Transformer, the slider features a 10.1-inch WXGA IPS display, so that's 1280 by 800 pixels. When you do the math, it equals to a pixel density of 149 ppi, which of course isn't hardly anything worth boasting about, but it's more than sufficient enough. You can tell with even fine text, very visible, easy on the eyes, and seeing that it is an IPS panel, it produces some realistic looking colors, very natural in its tone, not overly saturated like some AMOLED displays out there. It also has some nice wide viewing angles, so it maintains its clarity no matter how you look at it. And overall, it's a lovely looking display. Above the display, we find its front-facing 1.3 megapixel camera used for video chatting and also an occasional self-portrait. On its left edge, we find the microSD card slot, the manual reset button, the prominent volume rocker, and also dedicated power button. Good response to both of them. While on the right, you have the 3.5mm headset jack and a full-size USB port, so you connect a variety of different peripherals to it. On the top edge, you have the mini HDMI out port for video out functionality, and next to that, you have the proprietary charging port. Finally, perched right in the middle of the back, you have the 5 megapixel autofocus camera. Unfortunately, there's no flash with it. In order to expose its keyboard, you gotta lift it from the back edge right here, and once you just lift it up slightly, the mechanism is automatic and snaps into place. Yeah, the stainless steel part right here, which props up the tablet and rests on that. You also have these hooks on both sides to lock into place. Now, unfortunately, as you can tell, it's at a fixed angle. You can't move it at all. That's one of the biggest problems, because the most comfortable way to use the keyboard is on a level surface on a table. If you're trying to use it on a lap or on the ground, it just becomes a little bit uneasy, just because you can't move the actual display at a different angle. As far as the keyboard, it's nice. Our biggest issue is that it's rather cramped. We do like the chiclet keys. They're raised a little bit, so you have good distinction of the buttons. And the response is a little bit on the soft side, but it's still pretty easy on the fingers. You also have quick function buttons such as the home, back, the menu keys at your disposal, and a directional keypad right here, which is good. But once you're able to overcome the size, we didn't have too much of an issue as far as typing it out. Accuracy was good, and it's more than usable unless you do have large fingers. Well, there's hardly anything new with the Asus Eee Pad Slider and its experience, just because it's running stock Android 3.2.1 Honeycomb, so it falls in line to what we've seen already with other first-generation Honeycomb tablets out there. It offers a good amount of personalization, just like any other Android device. You have some widgets like the My Zone, which shows you some cool things like your photos. You have the clock and also the email and also temperature ones. Another My Zone one gives you some notifications. Overall, you have a deep personalization, and there's nothing more to it. Nowadays, we're not that mesmerized by dual-core processors, seeing that there are quad-core devices out there in the market right now, like the Asus Transformer Prime, but the Slider here features the same one found with the original Transformer. It's a dual-core NVIDIA Tegra 2 processor, and it's coupled with 1 GB of RAM. You can tell with most basic tasks, it's pretty responsive, instantaneous at times, for things like pinch gestures, zooming in, kinetic scrolling. It has a very responsive look to it, but with a live wallpaper, something a little bit more processor intensive, you can notice some choppiness, a little bit of delay. It's having a little bit more difficulty tracking our finger, but it's never to the point detrimental, and overall, it is tolerable. Of course, we prefer using the physical keyboard for typing up messages just because you have that tactile response. But if not, you have the on-screen keyboards. There are two options available. You have the Asus keyboard and also the stock honeycomb one. We actually prefer the stock honeycomb one just because the buttons, the size of the buttons are pretty good on with our fingers. But with the Asus keyboard, it's a little bit more stretched out, a little also cramped at the same time. But nonetheless, it exhibits a good amount of responsiveness as you're typing, so it's not that much of an issue. Sure, it's not as fast as the Transformer Prime, but as far as the web browsing experience on the slider, it's more than sufficient, just like any other dual-core packing tablet out there in the market. It exhibits a mostly responsive performance, even in the wake of Flash content. It's managed to maintain a good amount of responsiveness, but at times you do notice some choppiness, but it's not that much of an issue. Not surprisingly, we find the stock honeycomb music player on the Asus Eee Pad Slider. It has a nice presentation to it with the 3D carousel here. As far as the audio quality, it's just strange just because the speaker is actually placed in between the two portions of the tablet, so it doesn't disperse the audio that great, and overall it is rather weak in tone. With its 10.1-inch IPS display, you know it's going to offer a pretty good video watching experience, and rightfully so. The video we have here, which is encoded in MPEG-4 1920 by 1080 resolution, looks pretty fabulous. Maintains a good fluid rate as it's playing the video, good detail, and colors are natural in tone, but it's just worth noting that it doesn't offer support for DivX videos out of the box. Well, if you're big into photos, you'll be sorely disappointed by the 5-megapixel autofocus camera of the Asus Eee Pad Slider, just because overall photo quality is rather poor looking, below average. Specifically with details, it's very soft in tone, times muddy looking, and it produces some very inaccurate looking colors, tends to overexpose the shots for close-ups, and in low lighting conditions, there's just a huge amount of graininess and digital noise that muddy up the overall shots, and overall you're probably better off looking elsewhere. Equally in the same pedestal as the tablet's 720p video recording, it's nowhere close to being called high definition just because of its poor quality. For starters, details are out the door again. It just simply looks too soft and at times very muddy looking. There's also a good amount of artifacting when you're panning very quickly, and audio recording is also distorted, so to say the least, it's nothing even remotely close to being high definition. Even if you have to be very rigorous with your usage, you'll find the battery life of the slider to be more than satisfying, just because we're able to get at least one solid day of normal usage on a full charge, and by the end of the night it was only at the 40% mark, so it got us into the second day. But if you're a light user, you could probably extend that battery life even more. So here's the deal with the Asus Eee Pad Slider. It's nice that it offers the keyboard. It's incorporated into the tablet itself, so you don't have to purchase an additional accessory. But for $479.99, it's a pretty high mark you're gonna have to pay for it. You're probably better off spending an extra $200, close to $200, picking up the Asus Transformer Prime with its optional keyboard dock. You just get a lot more functionality and also a better spec tablet at the same time. But unless you really don't want to carry two things, you only carry one thing, then this is going to be the option for you. They're a little bit expensive. If it was chopped down by $100, let's say if it was $350, probably be a good deal, but for the money, you're not getting that much value out of it compared to some newer tablets. So if you'd like to learn more about the Asus Eee Pad Slider, you can check out our website, guys, PhoneArena.com. This is John V. As always, thanks for watching.